on this. If there is, could you post in the chat or anything so that I can kind of research myself into this subject better? That maybe not necessarily just watching something like Witsit. And like I said, I love Witsit. I'm not saying it like that. Just that I can then simplify it for myself better. Is there anything
You
out
want
there?
you want somebody that simplifies it more than
Yes,
Witsit?
a little bit more than Witsit.
I don't. I
It's another
the only
word for energy. That's basically it.
Maybe he
the
just needs
only
to slow down and do a simplified version for the people that have not been here for a while listening to him talk about it all the time. You know?
I don't know if it gets much better in that regard than Witsit. I mean, I could turn
Yeah.
you on to space. If you know, do you know Space Audits or do you know Shane St.
Though.
Pierre?
Yeah, I know Shane and knows things. Yeah, I do. Yep.
Yeah, there's nobody better than those three, and Witsit's probably going to be
Okay.
your best bet, really. Did you watch episode 33 of Schooling the Globers called Geocentrism?
I'm not sure. How old is it? Is it a while old? Like a little while?
A couple months at least.
Oh, then I haven't seen it. No, I have not.
That one, write that down. Schooling
Okay.
Globers, episode 33. That
33.
is
I won't miss
when
it because it's
you said something that's easy to understand. That one really came to mind because he does take his time to break it down, and then he even says, "I could go into this deeper, but for the reasons you stated," he's like, "I won't go any deeper into
Yes,
it."
that's
So
what I'm
that's the
meaning.
video.
Thank
There
you.
you go.
I appreciate that because I know Witsit can do it. I just haven't heard him yet because he's a lot of times on servers and stuff, and it's like I'm not saying he's doing anything wrong, but sometimes it's like, whoa, slow down, stop right there. You know what I mean? So that
Well,
people
yeah,
like
no, that
myself
means there is
can
something wrong.
understand him.
No, it
You
doesn't
know,
make sense when it comes from them. No, that means there is something wrong. If you can't
wouldn't agree with
understand it,
that.
there's nothing wrong with you. It means there's something wrong with the explanation.
No, I wouldn't agree with that. I just haven't been diving myself into ether. When I used to sit there with freaking Witsit on gyms, and he used to talk about it, then he made me understand it. We were on the same page. It's just been too long for me that I need to revisit this stuff again. It's been like 4 years. So for me, I need to refresh this again in my memory because I didn't speak about ether too much. We weren't allowed to. It was a shutdown. Be quiet in 24 or Quantum Eraser or Nathan and all them. So wherever I went, it was be quiet. So I kind of did myself, and I've said this, a disservice because I was not caring about that or the sky or anything because it was told to shut up, don't talk about that. So I think I at least need to give myself the respect to go look into it more because I know I can understand it and I can understand it through Witsit. I just wonder if there's a simplified version, like when you start off again. Because if you start right into boom, a big thing, him talking about it, I'm like, wait, you lost me at point 5. I need to talk about point 3 and 4 again. You know what I mean? So if there's a version, he's kind of breaking it down a little slower to me. I want to watch that. That's just for me, sweetheart. And I think he can explain it to me quite well.
Yeah,
Yep,
and the
I don't
double
know.
episode
For me
split
to
33.
thing,
understand it either.
the holes divide the light from itself, right? And then it makes those 2 points of light come out and widen, and then they got to fight each other, and then they create more points of light, like the ripple effect, right? And then that's how that works.
And I also want to say, I don't want to sit here and because my own research isn't good enough. Be like, oh, because I can't understand it, then they're not saying it well enough. No, actually, no. I haven't even done my research in the last 4 years enough to understand what's it just talking about it right now. So if somebody doesn't understand what's it, maybe like myself, we need to look into it a little bit more before we just go around saying, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, word salad. Because in reality, a lot of people I
I
think
know what
aren't
he's
researching
talking
in it.
about, but what he's talking about doesn't make sense.
Just listen, you say
Well, what doesn't
everything
make
doesn't make
sense?
sense.
Specifically, allow me to rebut. What doesn't make sense?
Yeah, okay, so we're considering a variable to be the cause for things we observe in physics. This variable is ether, and I think electromagnetism explains all the phenomena better
Are,
than ether.
are you aware that electromagnetism is subject to the same things that the laser interferometry
I don't think
experiments show?
I don't think the ether
What?
causes the stuff. I think this. I think the point is the ether is supposed to be like the medium of everything, which everything that can react in or act from. It, that's like the background medium. I think it's supposed to be the connector with like physical and non-physical mass. I guess you would say, in a way.
Well, let's go into how we prove ether. Okay. So Michelson Morley, people say Michelson Morley debunked the ether. Well, that's a straw man because it debunked a static ether that at the time they thought existed. So they thought they were going to be able to test Earth's velocity through this static ether. Well, they didn't get a result that they thought would work for a non-static model or a static model because they had the globe flying through space at I don't remember the numbers on that, but anyway, they got a drift. The drift was only a fraction of what they thought it was going to be for the globe's rotation, and so they're still left holding that bag. Well, that 15 degree per hour drift is exactly the same as the stars. And so in laser interferometry, basically it's an anisotropic light distribution. And what that means is that if
Can
you
I
shoot a
interrupt?
beam, if you, yeah, go ahead.
So they did not. So what's causing the 15 degree per hour drift if they didn't detect it to be ether?
Oh, I was getting into that. So when you shoot a light beam directly east, it has a slower, it moves slower than if you shoot it west. And so there's a preferred direction to light. Light is kind of bucking an ether wind, if you'll think of it that way. And so they've tried 6 ways from Sunday. Dayton Miller did over 2 million individual laser interferometry experiments, and all of them showed the same thing, that the lab frame is stationary. It doesn't move. The Earth indeed is not moving. And there's
Wait,
a rotation around us that drags light with it. And it's moving at
if
about
ether is
15 degrees an hour.
wait, okay, so did they detect ether in Michelson Morley, or you said they detected a moving ether or stationary?
They detected a dynamic ether. So rotating at about 15 degrees an hour. That changes with altitude and with other conditions that we don't quite understand yet. But it also would make sense in the overall toroidal geometry and physics where, yeah, each layer should be moving a little bit differently. This is a very dynamic system. But yeah, that's how we prove. I mean, they use that light anisotropic light distribution and Sagnac corrections correcting for that uneven distribution from west to east. That's how they track everything. That's how they send an intercontinental ballistic missile. That's how the GPS in your phone works. It all references a stationary lab frame that isn't moving, and it has to work. Now, that's a really layman's description of that. There's a lot more detail that goes into that stuff, man.
So ether wind is the ether moving?
Yeah, it appears so. It's moving it at
They
about 15
detected it to
degrees
be
an hour.
moving. They detected the ether to move at 15 degrees per hour.
Roughly at where we're at on Earth. Yeah, like I said, with altitude that actually changes. And so, it's
Oh,
it's
so
it's
it's not 15 degrees per hour consistent?
not perfectly, no. No, it does. It changes with altitude. So, like I said, it's used, it's a known science. They're going to call it different things in a relativistic frame, but all of the paradoxes go out the window when you just assume that we're inside of a field or a medium, if you will.
Yeah, they can't change. Like, so if I got a thing like the clock, right, and it's set and it doesn't take batteries, say it just has perpetual motion clock. No matter what I put in front of that clock, water, air, no matter what I do, get drunk, it doesn't matter how I see that clock. The clock in this instance is not changing. The time on that clock, the way that's work, it's not gonna ever change. But the way I'm viewing it, my perception of it is, right? And the way I'm gonna explain it to you at different points in time of my perception, right? Same with the boat, same with anything else, right? I mean, you understand what I'm saying? So when you look up and see, and in like your mind, this is what your explanation is.
Huh?
The objects aren't moving faster or slower ever. They're doing
Oh,
the
you're
same thing.
talking about length contraction and time dilation?
So
Right.
I
So
have a
when you
question.
get so when you like you said, when you get closer or further, that's just your perception or your inference of being closer or further, like a jet being closer to you and looking like it's doing this distance at this speed versus being real far away. You understand? Like yeah, it's all just yeah.
So if the stars are rotating 15 degrees per hour and ether is rotating 15 degrees per hour, when we gain altitude, that 15 degrees per hour, does it decrease with altitude or it just slightly shifts however?
God, I'm fuzzy on that detail right now. I don't exactly remember. I want to say that it increases with altitude, but I don't even know if I remember correctly. I mean, they were getting different readings and they didn't know. So somebody's gonna have to go back and do all this over again because that was. I mean, I know that they've done it and know this information, but they ain't gonna tell us, you know. Because the reality of the situation is like everybody says, well, okay, relativity in space. Well, the first thing that would have happened, really, honestly, I hope you're listening right now. The first thing that would have happened if we really put people in space was they would have put a laser interferometer on the ISS to tell us what's happening outside of the lab frame. But they never do that, and they never will, because it doesn't exist. That is what they would do. How would you prove relativity? Dude, put a laser interferometer on the ISS. Duh. It's outside the lab frame. It's in space. We're going to get data that we can't get down here on Earth. No, nothing. Crickets.
They
Plain
don't.
dead.
Superconductors should
They
do
don't believe in ether like you, so they don't care about that.
Believe it or
superconductors should
non-belief
show
in
you.
ether, dude, you have to use them for satellites, bro. This isn't even about that, dog. They know they have to account for that, regardless of whether or not they use the word ether. You know, at some
Yeah, the
point you're
word
going to smell
ether
what
doesn't
we're stepping
bother
in.
me. Action or reaction, just whatever you're gonna have. It's the end result. You can explain how any man, how a human explains it. Like whatever we see happen, the result we can repeat the attribute of is what we have to pay attention to, regardless what you call it, like charms, ether, energy, wind, magnetism, hope. It doesn't really matter.
You know,
You have to have
I'm gonna be
agreement.
honest, angling, I just want to say I'm not interested in some kind of textbook definition of ether. I'm more interested in what individuals, how they interpret, because yeah, I think that's more interesting.
Okay, yeah. Tesla, Steinmetz, Heaviside, Dollard, Maxwell, all of them recognized and believed in an ether, you know? So a lot of the people that actually built the technology and invented the things that make our lives what they are today, all recognized an ether, which I
On the
find,
globe.
regardless of flat Earth or anything like that, that's one thing that I really want to get through to just anybody, globe flat, I don't care what you believe. Dude, they've been hiding ether from us, and if what Nikola Tesla said about ether was true, like, dude, this is world changing stuff, man. There is an infinite potential energy stored up within the universe. I mean,
That's called the word energy. It's called infinite energy in the universe. The etherical realm is what they're trying to connect. Etherical, ether. They're trying to
but
Ethereal.
what
connect.
he was
They're
trying to
trying to
say, you know,
connect
what
like the idea of like mass, massless, physical, whatever action, reaction, like light. So they say the effects of it, and then they say the idea of quantum shit. So something happening over here and happening over there. Yeah, it's all in the same boat.
yeah, ether just solves the paradoxes of quantum and cosmological scale issues, you know,
So
without even really having to try that hard. It's not even like literally somebody was like, gee, these paths of the planets kind of look like toroidal geometry when you map it out over a toroidal Earth. Let's see if it fits. So then Alan actually took that information to a third party and said, "Hey, guy that doesn't believe in flat Earth and thinks that we're full of it, that's really smart. Would you take this and see if this geometry checks out?" And that guy said, "Yeah, sure." And that was the dude. I can science that. And so I can't remember the guy's name. I feel bad, but the name of his channel is I can science that. And he put
Right.
the flat Earth in a toroid and put the paths of the planets in that arrangement over it. And he said, "Yeah, that fits perfectly." He's like, "I'm shocked. I didn't think this was going to work."
Why
I
are
mean,
we giving light the weight that it has? Why are we saying, if light, then explanation of everything? Does anybody find that weird or vague?
you're talking about light with laser interferometry experiments.
Light in general, light at all. Where it comes from, what it does, what type, from what, the effect of it. Is it physical? Does it have mass? The attribute of light itself. When people say light is everything and you're light or you're a hologram or this is whatever, like basically, I mean, do you understand?
You might as well be saying ether, I guess. I mean, it's all really vague and, you know.
So I'm saying, so to find out whether ether is a thing, they were using light and they're giving light the big weight. They give light the big speed and all this other shit to give you the attribute of reality. I just find that weird.
Well, I guess there is other ways we can look at it. Piezo was talking about some really interesting stuff that I had found a long time ago and tried to bring up, and nobody seemed interested. And then all of a sudden, Piezo comes across it. I'm not like anyway. Anyway, so get this. I'll try to explain this really easy. So you know how you got a magnet, and then you got copper wires, and the copper wires turn, and then that makes electricity within the magnetic field.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so get this. If you turn the magnet and leave the copper stationary, it doesn't work. If you turn both of them at the same time, it works. If you turn just the copper, it works. But if you turn the magnet, it doesn't work. So what does that tell you? That tells you that the magnet is affecting something that's in 3D space. And the position of the magnet doesn't matter. But the
What if
position
it's the copper?
But if you see, that's the thing, is it's the position of the copper
Hold on a
within
second.
that
What about,
3D space.
yeah, now if you take a copper tube and the copper's sitting still and you move the magnet, what happens? You just
Nothing.
drop the magnet. You drop the magnet in the copper tube, it still reacts and slows down, right?
Oh yeah, that slows down. Yeah, that diamagnetic reaction. Yeah, that you need a really strong magnet to do that. That would be diamagnetism, I believe.
Well, I mean, in my mind, I mean, yeah, magnetism's magnetism to me, brother. But yeah,
Well,
I got
there's multiple different kinds. Yeah,
yeah. That's what
and
you'd say.
and
That's
then
that's an opinion.
well, every single thing in this world is diamagnetic. Some things are paramagnetic, and something I can't remember the names of all of it.
So you mean
But
magnetic?
so diamagnetic means that it's only ever repelled by a magnetic field, and it doesn't matter which pole. It's repelled by both the north and south pole, and everything in this realm is diamagnetic. So to say that certain things are magnetic and certain things aren't, yeah, well, that's half true. Because everything is repelled by either a north or a south pole, which is interesting. I don't know how to explain that to you. I'm just telling you what is. But
No, I'd say
that
it's
thing
all
that you're talking
magnetic.
about is a
Yeah,
different that's a different thing altogether. But
I
what
just
I'm trying
wouldn't
to get
define
at is,
magnetism.
if you spin the magnet, you're not spinning the magnetic field when you spin the magnet. It's only the copper as it rotates against the magnetic field that creates that. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see
How
what
do
you're
So the
you
saying.
know
magnet.
that?
Because the copper is actually pulling the attribute of electrical continuity from the air, right? And
Yeah,
then
but
that
did you
extra,
watch the
that
video?
continuity that the copper's pulling that way, the magnet can't pull it for the copper when the magnet spins next to it. The magnet's only going to get its attribute, right? It might give it just a small, 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 insignificant amount, but not enough. Now, check this out. Now, say you surrounded um, a copper blade, like a fan blade, and then you had a magnetic blade in front of it. Now you would blow the copper blade with the magnetic blade. Now, thus doing what they said you can't do. You would get the copper blade to move with the moving magnet because they would both be shaped like a fan, and one would blow the other, and they would cause each other to move and attribute keeping each other to move because the other one would make it move still because it would gain the attribute of itself moving. Now, you see? So, I mean, if you haven't done all the variables and you haven't manipulated it every way you think you could, really, how do you have the result yet? How do you have
That's
the
what I'm
reference to
asking.
say, I've seen each? No, I mean, I'm not saying you have,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, I don't know, brother.
Like, do you have a magnet? Do you have copper?
Does what?
Do you have a magnet? Do you have copper?
Do I?
Yeah.
No, I don't. I don't need a magnet to know that if you shape the magnet like a fan blade and blow another fan blade with it, it's gonna blow the. I mean, is that what you're talking about?
Well, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of people talking about electro. I'm not having a go at you. Just
No,
saying, there's a lot
I
of
know,
people.
Merle.
You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of people talking about electromagnetism. But I just wonder where they're getting their info from.
I'm just thinking about the way I can take a fan in front of any other fan that's blowing air and it'll blow that fan. I put my fan at the window, it's going to blow it. So if I take a copper thing, see what he just said was if I have the moving magnet, it's not going to affect the copper. I said that's not true in the attribute of the way you design the magnet. So if you had a magnet designed and set up like a fan blade and you spun the magnet now it's going to move the copper because if the copper's like it's only going to get moved by wind, just like if you put the little toy outside and you blow it. Yeah, that's all I'm saying. I'm not going to say it's going to give the effect that you're looking for, but it's gonna have the action you were looking for that didn't happen.
I'm talking about like the alternator in your car, bud.
Nice.
Like you know how you got a magnet and it moves against copper, or the
I'm
copper moves
talking
against the
about the
magnet and it
exception to your rule.
generates. Yeah,
I'm
I was
talking about
talking
the
about
exception to your rule, bud. The rule you
Well,
just came up with, moving the magnet, and you said it won't move it. I just proved that wrong. That's all. Go ahead with your alternator.
well, it's that diamagnetic aspect that nobody denies is real. I mean, it's just a different magnetic effect, I guess. Like I said, I
What
was
about
talking about like
wind?
an alternator.
So
But what was the
wind's
guy's
not
question? Go
magnetic.
ahead, man. I'm sorry.
No, man, you're fine. You're fine. It's just, I just wonder sometimes where, you know, what people are saying, is that coming from a practical know-how of, like, you know, working with a car or something electrical, and that's how you know about it. You know what I mean?
Oh,
There's different
absolutely.
ways of,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I learned from people that are actually doing this stuff. The guy I heard that from specifically, that you can probably go talk to and find, his name is Piezo. He's over on Aether Cosmology server a lot. I think he comes in here too. I don't know. He's the guy that's actually doing this stuff in a lab. I don't know how much he's actually shared about that or whatever, but I know he's hands on with a lot of scientific stuff for either work or school.
He's called Jesus is Lord in here, I think.
Right. Well,
Just
Demok
seems to me.
loves labs.
Yeah, and it just seems to me like the copper's stationary. If it's stationary, it's not going to get the attribute it needs. And when you're dropping a magnet by it or throwing a magnet around, right? Just like that, being all willy nilly. But if you want to be smart about it, you can be the exception to the rule. But now that's just what it seems like to me. So if you take the copper, you sit the magnet still. The magnet doesn't have to do any of that shit. It already has its charge. It already has its kinetic energy already in it or whatever it's got to use to be magnet. So when you take the copper blade and you move it around, you impart a little kinetic energy into it that it doesn't have while it's stationary. And then that's what's giving it its reaction to the magnet. That's my opinion. I don't know. I don't think it's magical of any sort in any way or the form if it's physically what's happening. It can't be.
I guess the original question was is how to illustrate ether. And so I thought that a great way because the logical mind tells you, well, it shouldn't matter which spins against which. But kind of the evidence points to the fact that, yeah, if you don't spin the magnet, or if you spin the magnet, excuse me, it doesn't matter because the magnet is actually acting on a non-physical field, and that non-physical field is what the copper is interfacing and interacting with. So the magnet is just a device to polarize that field, if you
The
ask me.
air. Yeah, the air it's spinning in gets the kinetic
Ether,
energy.
air, via
Yeah, the stuff I
intangible
wave my
medium.
hand in. Yeah. I mean, we call it air, don't we? The stuff you wave your hand in.
It's a little deeper than that.
Well, I
A
don't know
little
how many
more.
names you need, really.
You don't like the word air?
A lot of them don't, for some
It's weird,
fucking
isn't it?
reason. They got
It's
to have
weird.
their own word for air. They got to have their own word for energy. They got to have their own word for magnet. It's weird. One word
Mys-
don't work.
Mysterious invisible field. Oh, you mean air? Yeah.
So this is why we can't learn anything or get smarter, because when we try to nail something down, we got 72 more meanings we gotta learn about that are just the same thing that we already had. Air.
Yeah.
It's weird.
A
Ether
magnet is
physics. Oh, so you mean
is
physics?
acting on
Yeah.
air.
Oh, a magnet's magnetism, like you said, diomagnet, this magnet, that, and all that. No, it's just magnetism. And then you said the other thing. That was just kinetic energy you were talking about. Because anything that's movement or has anything to do with shit all or to build up the amount of energy or charge is kinetic. It's all just kinetic. Look it up if you don't believe me. It's right there in the word, in the thing, in the frame, in the dictionary, in the form, in Google, wherever you look it up. Kinetic. And then magnetism is magnetism. I don't care what two AMs or PMs you put on it, or dio, or pharaoh, pseudo. Like if you explain it to children, the best way is to leave it the hell alone, the simplest way. All you're really supposed to do is stick to a term, and then you be the best one that explains that term the best way. So if there's a thing called air and you believe in the air and stuff happens when this within this air and this air is the medium, why do you have to rename it to confuse everybody? It just seems weird to me. It's like, how are you ever going to get anywhere? What then? Bob tomorrow's going to come up with a new word for ether. Then you guys are going to be struck because he's more famous and gets more
Yeah.
views. Doesn't make any sense.
Ether, air, fire, wind, water.
What's ether?
Well, I mean, that air, fire, wind, water thing, along with ether, was around a lot longer than, I don't know, it's been around a long
Don't
time.
say it. Don't
What
say it.
So,
about the word
air and
theory?
ether, words that denoted specific things, existed next to each other within cultures and specific belief systems.
Theory, yes,
You're too
belief.
fast.
Theory and etherical. Etherical theory. Theoretical, etherical realm. Connected to reality, the real, ether. That's what it means. That's what it is. That was the first term way back that you guys don't know what you're talking about. Because other gentlemen took it and tried to make it some ball of energy or some magnet. They don't know which one.
I just want to get people thinking in terms of ether physics so that maybe somebody somewhere can figure something out and we can have what's called free energy.
You just said the word free energy. We live in a field of energy. People call it air. See, they've already done that. They've already took the free energy and imparted it and divided it and called it air, oxygen, hydrogen, gasoline, water, a cell, pee, poop. Do you understand? I mean, if everything around you is energy and you know it and I know it, don't beat around the bush. The burning bush is talking to you.
Well, to quote Nikola Tesla, he said that stored up within the universe there is infinite potential energy, and the receiver, the recipient, and transmitter of this energy is ether.
What
So
if I
ether's
said?
kind of the bridge.
What if I
I mean,
said
you're
you
saying the
were?
energy is the air or whatever, and I'm saying that the energy is actually pulled from an infinite potential called counter space.
I don't know what that is. You'd have to show that or
Yeah,
demonstrate that.
that's
That'd be
actually
your
like a
claim.
it's a really new term in science. Eric Dollard started using it, and a lot of people have picked it up since because it makes perfect sense. That link I posted earlier of Brenner's little answer about what would be the consequence to physics if ether was confirmed, that thing actually covers that really well.
So nothing is something every time, right? So always nothing. So counter space, nothingness is just the best fucking explanation for everythingness. That's the weirdest shit to me. And one more thing before you cut me off, Tesla. How the fuck did he visit a universe sitting in a fucking chair with his hand to his chin? That doesn't make any sense. So all these big chair sitters, right, who did all this good universe fucking technology, have lost their fucking marbles. And if you believe this gentleman has went out to the universe, I I just think that's weird,
You know he got zapped real good once, right? I think it might have been more than once too.
brother. I'm not at all against physical, tangible, in the lab, provable, testable, touchable, getting your ass zapped to see what things do. I'm not against that, and it might have had an attribute on him. And I believe he does know about electricity a little bit from it. Maybe even more than you and I. Maybe he even talked to the shit. I don't know. Maybe he was a USB. Who knows, brother? I don't know how it works. I'm just saying, we have the most brilliant guys that are standing on the cankles of ants, right? One of them's freebasing or drinking ether, or I'm sorry, mercury. I misspoke. He's getting high on mercury. They used to get high on ether. Uh, let's see what else. And all these gentlemen, like they all have like weird ass, like what were they really doing sitting in a lab back in the day? What do you think, man? You in the back in the day sitting in there, what do you think you're trying to devise? Your people are might go at war. You might need food. People might be dying that you love. What are you going to try to devise in that lab? Think about it. People might want to get high that week. I mean, I don't know, brother. What's in these gentlemen's mind when they're really in that lab?
People might want to get high that week.
Yeah, where do you think crack came from? Heroin.
A lab, a lab.
Do they just let you go in here, bro? Like, does
Yeah,
anybody ever stop you?
yeah. He gets
Stop me
stopped.
from what? Telling you that the pyramids already had the ingredients, and then other people and technicians and chemists. What do you think chemists do? Do you ever stop a chemist in a lab from making drugs? Let me see you do it. Go stop them.
It's like Breaking Bad, damn it. It's art. Whether you're getting people high or you're discovering an electric charge and zapping yourself.
Well, listen, if you can make trillions and trillions of dollars off everybody wanting your drug, why the hell do you need to invent anything or tell any philosophy? You've already done your job.
Exactly. Meth.
Come on, man. All the drugs, mercury, all the shit. We don't know what the effects of all this stuff is. They tell you, they give you warning labels. I'm not going to go trying stuff out to see if I can. I don't got 9 lives, so I'm not going to play around. But these gentlemen did. And these are your guys that brought you your science, and you hang on to their every word. And they're no different than the guy in somebody's basement freebasing right now. Some of them.
Um, you, you bring up a good side of the character of the labs, the scientist. You've got Doc Brown from Back to the Future. You got Frankenstein from Frankenstein. These
Breaking
guys are
Bad,
crazy, far out on the edge, doing things.
Jeffrey Dahmer's, Breaking Bad's,
Yeah,
Leonardo da Vinci's, people who want to be immortal, uh, Hermistus Trismegistus, whatever you want to hermetically seal it. Like, come on, man. Put pink liquid,
yeah.
soaking people in it. You think, what do you mean they let people in here? What, people with a conscience, with original thought process? What?
You mentioned a lot of good things there.
Is it my fault I'm an original thinker that I don't go with whatever somebody says all the time?
What
Why do I
about
have to?
we're taking it all the way? Egyptian adrenochrome labs, where they first invented scaring the
Fuel.
people, and taking
It's
out
no.
the adrenaline.
Yes, sir. Visions, fuel, crystal balls, crystals. If that's what picks up radio frequency, and a lot of radio frequency mechanisms don't need a battery source, right? They work on sound.
Crystals, yeah.
So now, when they talk to crystal balls, what really were they doing? What were they telling you about back in the day? Technology before its time.
And I was
People
trying
just
to
don't.
understand this ether thing. Like, what are we talking
They're
What,
stoned.
brother? I'm sorry.
Just let
Is
them
there a
be
lie?
stoned.
And
What
cook.
part about everything we said don't you understand?
They're totally
about? I
stoned.
feel like we're heading towards Narnia.
Narnia is what you don't understand about. I don't think we even mentioned that part, brother.
Man, I was trying to keep it on the rails, but this dude's kind of off his rocker a little bit.
I'm sorry. I
Well,
was just born
I'm
that way.
still thinking about ether, and I feel like we're moving away from that.
Well, what are you thinking about? Tell us. We'll stay right on ether. I'm sorry, brother. I should have
No,
never
it's okay.
sought the
I don't
rails.
mean to derail
Can I
you.
have a drink of ether,
Well,
or
this is
like
better.
I hold some?
So, angling alchemy, what I wanted to say was, you know, ether, according to Tesla, was an undetectable physical medium that allows for the propagation of electromagnetic radiation and light, all those things, right? Electricity, Maxwell, they all thought that there needed to be a medium for electromagnetism to propagate through, right? But
Yeah,
that
all that checks
medium
out.
is undetectable.
Yeah, laser interferometry would be the way that we detect that.
I thought it was undetectable. Laser interferometry detects the ether.
Yes, it also proves the anisotropic distribution of light, which debunks relativity. So there's a lot when it actually comes into the engineering of this stuff. Um, that's why we exist, I guess, really, as ether people or whatever. It makes a lot more sense.
Well, I want it to make sense. So you're saying laser interferometry detects ether and they detect it moving, right?
Yep.
And this is the medium that electromagnetism is propagating through. How do you detect that? What are you detecting?
So when you shoot a light beam in one direction, east, let's say we're going east, shooting the beam east, it'll actually be slower than if you shoot it west. So there's a drag. So that means that c, the speed of light, isn't a constant. Relativity is tied at the hip to light being a constant. So because it isn't, it's a problem for relativity.
Well, well, it's a constant in a mathematical form, but yeah, there's all kinds of things that nothing is truly constant, right?
Didn't
I
they
mean, it's
spin it?
interesting. I kind of see what you're saying, but the ability to repeat this, I mean, everything from GPS to weapons guidance systems rely on SAGNAT corrections, which inherently reference a lab frame stationary on Earth. So, every time a satellite's sending coordinates or they're talking to each other saying I'm over this area on Earth, Within all those equations, there's always a reference to a stationary lab frame on Earth. This wouldn't be the case if relativity was true.
Sagnac correction. Hold on, let me look that up.
Yeah, you can go to Space Audit's channel. A lot of great videos covering this stuff. Robert Bennett, he's believes in the globe, but he believes it's not moving, and he's an ether proponent as well. He's a PhD physicist. Yeah, I don't know. It's not like this idea isn't out there. There's a lot of people that believe in it. It's just hidden.
So is ether surrounding the Earth?
I think we're in it. Like Earth, we're on the plane of inertia. So in toroidal geometry, there's a plane of inertia right in the middle. That's where we are, man. We're on the plane of inertia. We're not moving, and we're on a plane.
So there's no universe. It's just Earth and then what's above it.
Well, we don't know. We can't speculate about anything beyond where we can test. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean,
We can
because my
speculate, but that's
question.
all we can do.
Right. No, I understand because I don't really dig ether anyway. I'm saying, so if they have the idea of space, right, and something falling in space, is Earth falling in ether or is it spinning in ether itself? Because why would it not if ether is spinning stuff?
I guess that is one of the wondrous questions of the world. How are we, comfortably held nice and stationary here? I mean, it says in the Bible that God placed Earth on its pillars or whatever, and I just think it just makes logical sense that the uh, there's a state of rest from
Do you
which
think?
to extrapolate everything else. Otherwise,
Do
it
you
would be
think
chaos.
pillars? Do you think pillars have to be up and down vertically like two poles, or do you think that it could have meant pillars like elevation stacks or layers or gradients or medium? Like, do you understand what I'm saying?
They
Like the
might be
layers of
metaphysical
rocks
pillars. I don't
stacked.
know.
I know, but listen to my question though. Uh, Pillars. Do you like? If I think of pillars, most people think the pillars like for a porch that just go up vertically, and you got a pillar holds up the roof, right? But what if the real pillar is horizontal Earth itself, the horizontal pillar of existence, and then upon it, vertically, other pillars of gas or air, water, whatever. You understand?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
I'm just saying it. I mean, if this is the reality we live on, I haven't seen any other type of pillar other than the horizontal frame of reference. Now, if it's a long pillar and we're standing upon it like a plane, then that would make more sense to me. It's just all in how you extrapolate or interpolate the word, right? Or insinuate.
My understanding of Michelson Morley is there was two beams of light perpendicular to each other, and if there was a moving ether, then they would have witnessed a difference in the interference pattern when the two beams kind of intersected, right?
Yeah, I'm well aware. Yep. Go ahead.
And they didn't detect that.
Ooh, yeah. So that's where the straw man comes in. So they're referring to a static ether, which at the time they were testing for, because they thought the Earth itself was moving and flying through this static ether, and that's what they would be testing.
If
And so they thought they'd
ether
get
was
something
moving,
like
I'm sorry.
30, 30 degrees a second or something like that. God, I'm vague on the exact numbers. I wish I could remember. But
Okay,
and
so
then instead of getting 0, they got 6 degrees per second or six something. Like I said, I wish I could remember the numbers. But
if
it wasn't.
ether was drift, sorry, I was
No,
in
go
the
ahead.
middle of
Go
trying to
ahead.
make this point. Yeah, if ether was drifting at 15 degrees per hour, I don't know, is that the actual claim? Because if it was, then they would have detected an interference pattern, which they did not.
Yeah, I can show you where. I mean that interference pattern that we're talking about is just well known and well used within science altogether these days. Like I
Well,
explained
look at
about
it this way.
satellites and shit.
Try to hear me out because this is my perception, right? We have a
Sure.
moving ether, right? We have Earth. They claim Earth is rotating. Fuck all that, right? We got rotating ether. The drift that they detect at 15 degrees per hour, that's due to ether. So when they set up their, that crossed path for the lasers, that means that one of the lasers is going to be moving more in that direction of the ether, right? So
Yeah,
then
correct.
there would be a difference. Yeah, I think that's what they call a fringe shift or a segment,
Yep.
or whatever you want to call it. So they didn't detect that. Like there was no detection of the whatever you would call that.
Fringe shift.
I realize that in the summary that they might say that, but I can absolutely assure you that there is a fringe shift. It is very real, and it is used in technology to this day. And like I said, where they say we didn't detect the ether, well, they didn't detect a static ether that they thought they were flying through at an
Well, they didn't
ungodly
detect.
speed.
Well, if ether is causing this, I'm connecting this to the stars. If ether is causing the rotation of the stars, that 15 degrees per hour shift, the rotation, right? Then in my mind, it's like, how did you not detect that? How did you not detect the 15 degrees per hour of the
Well, they
rotating
did.
ether?
They just lied to you. That's all that it really is to it, man. I mean, if you're reading something that's telling you other than the truth, then that's just the way it is. I mean, these papers, we've gone over them multiple times. All the citations and everything, all the cross T's and dotted I's are all there between Shane's database and Alan's database. So I've been over all this stuff and heard all these refutations. I realize you're not trying to debate me, you're just trying to probe. I get that. And I'm not here to try to debate either. I just want to turn
Well,
people on to this idea so that we can get real science down the road, you know?
I know for a fact that those guys are just referencing Nicholson Morley.
Mickelson Morley, Ruyan Wang, and a bunch of other people that did later subsequent experiments to prove the further nuanced points that you might be trying to get into here. Um, Again, I'm not as well learned as those guys. I've been through all their presentations, but man, I don't have the recall that they do. Their recall is fucking impressive. I mean, I can
Have they
digest the
spun it
information,
vertically?
but
Have they spun it like a Ferris wheel?
yeah, dude, that's what Ruyan Wang is, I think. That's what his experiment was the spinning laser interferometer, or it was the linear one.
Diagonal?
There's a bunch of them where they do a bunch of different stuff. They put it on a track and they move it in one direction. Then some dude puts it on something that spins the whole thing. And then, yeah, and they just do a whole bunch of different
Yeah, I mean
ones.
that's what I'm talking about. And then
It's
add
always
liquid and
it's always showing a drag, always showing a fringe shift,
from
and
what?
east to west drag. I have a
Oh,
short video I can put up with maybe. Yeah, you probably already know all that stuff. It sounds like you kind of know what you're talking about already.
but I mean, what's the drag? I mean, is the drag from?
I mean, we can't necessarily prove that it's ether, but it checks all the boxes. I mean, somebody else might have a different opinion, but I mean, it seems kind of obvious that, like, all of a sudden we use this ancient word that's been around for a long time to describe the universe, and things start falling into place, and everybody that did anything of any significance believes in and recognizes it. It's kind of like, maybe I should pay attention to this.
Didn't they replace ether with vacuum?
Yeah, I don't exactly know what you're talking about there. I
Well,
know that during the time,
before they
Nicholas.
started talking about dark energy and dark matter, the a lot of Newton's laws of motion are based on a vacuum, something moving through space without any air resistance. Vacuum. So a vacuum couldn't drag something because there's no air resistance for it to do that.
Yeah, Nikola Tesla actually used to start a lot of his lectures by saying space has no properties and would go into a little spiel about the inadequacies of relativity, and then would go into whatever speech he was going to make. But he would preface them by saying space has no properties, just to remind people that relativistic ideas aren't where it's at, I guess.
Man after
Yeah,
my own heart.
it's interesting. It seems like they've filled in a lot of things with language. You know, aspects of our reality with just words. You know,
And ideas.
sophisticated language.
Relativity is such a mind
Yeah,
fuck of an
space,
idea.
space doesn't have to mean empty.
Yeah, but what does relativity mean to who? Right? Relative
Depends
to
on
who?
where you're standing.
Well,
I mean,
when I consider
exactly.
something relative, it just means that it's like observer dependent. Like I can perceive a rate of motion different from somebody.
So have you guys seen the Einstein's train thing that Alan came up with? A version of Einstein's train, the thought experiment. Have you guys seen that?
Nope.
It's hilarious, bro. So I mean, in relativity, you'd have to see the whole story, but I'll try to get to it quick. So in relativity, lightning could strike. If lightning strikes this train trolley, two different strikes at the exact same time, then the bomb goes off. But if you're in a relativistic frame set, then the bomb won't go off. But the question is, will you get on the train? In actuality, does it occur simultaneously? Yeah, I don't know, I just
Wait,
think it's
what was
hilarious
it
because
again?
then we end up asking them, "Will you get on the train or not?"
I don't understand. What?
So it's just a thought experiment thing. So the bomb on the train will go off if 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 two lightning strikes hit the train at the exact same time. Okay, and that is what's going to happen. But from a relativistic point of view, you're not going to see those lightning strikes hit the train because you're on the train. Okay? And so, from the real lab frame point of view, you're getting two simultaneous strikes. But relativity is telling you that you're not going to see those strikes simultaneously, so they're not going to actually happen simultaneously, so the bomb isn't going to go off. But the question is, will you ride the train? Maybe you had to be
Yeah,
there.
yeah, perfectly safe to ride the train.
Yeah, okay, that's where it gets funny because I'm not getting on the train.
Sure, because you don't understand relativity.
No, I understand relativity, I just don't believe it. But if you're willing to get on the
So
train, then I guess so be it.
yeah, so this mechanism, I presume, so let's say the bomb is in the center of the train, right? And if you get a lightning strike at the front and the back simultaneously, then the bomb goes off. Have I understood the
Yeah,
example
something like
correctly?
that. I might have fucked up a detail, to be honest with you. You'd have to go
No,
back
that's fine.
over it. But you get the gist of it if you understand relativity. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
The front of the train gets
Yeah,
struck and the
that's
back of the
all
train
right.
gets struck.
Yeah, simultaneously. Now, the problem there is that the electricity from these lightning strikes will have to travel half the length of the train towards the bomb, right? So as it's moving forward, one of these is going to arrive to the bomb faster, and the other signal is going to arrive slower. So the bomb is not going to accept these signals at the same time. I mean, depending on who calibrated it, that's another issue. Like if some idiot doesn't know what they're doing and there's enough tolerance there, sure, it might go off. But sticking to the spirit of the question, you should be fine.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it there, man.
Nope. Also, something to keep in mind in these examples, observer isn't necessarily a person, right? So observers in physics is anything that um, registers a signal or a change or something. People talk about like the observer effect, but it's not necessarily a conscious agent. It can just be like a sensor or a bomb in this case.
Yeah, that's a good thing to bring up. Are you familiar with Newton's bucket?
Vaguely, is that the thing that the bucket spins or the universe spins and it's the same effect?
Yeah, it's a really great
No,
way to
not.
illustrate the lab frame, and even Newton himself said that it was a paradox that he couldn't solve. Something to that effect, I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah, I don't
Because
know
of
much about it.
the
I've
dude
heard
in the
about it.
bucket frame. I'm sorry, what's that?
I don't know much about it, but I think I've heard of it.
Oh, okay. It's really simple. I mean, so if you're outside of the bucket and you see the bucket spinning and the water in the bucket, then you see the vortex and you say, okay, the bucket's spinning, there's the vortex, right? Well, then if you assume the bucket frame, which you attach the guy to a bucket, which would be a different observer point that you just brought up, that's what made me think. So that guy doesn't detect any motion with the spinning bucket attached to the bucket. But the problem is that there's a vortex in front of him indicating motion. And Newton said that, of all the things that something like that, he couldn't figure it out. It was a problem for him. But that was one of the things that PhD physicist Robert Bennett was talking about recently, and how it's been around for hundreds of years. And, as ether physics people, we recognize the lab frame as being dynamically unique and absolute. So, you know, the bucket frame, don't get caught up in the bucket frame, dog.
So
I
I've heard you mention the lab frame a couple of times. Is that just like from like the Earth's frame of reference, so to speak?
That would be in reference to a stationary frame on Earth, correct? Just sitting on Earth.
England, I have a question. Did you say Shane came up with a relativity like a conundrum, like a train going fast in like lightning heat?
I think it was Allen's spin-off of Einstein's train, if I'm not mistaken. So it's
Okay, the
it's
one of
Einstein's train essentially, but Allen added the bomb or whatever.
well, well, even you had to answer that question. It's not his spin. The bomb, yeah, the bomb. I would say probably his spin off. But again, that kind of question is a bit of a, I would say, mouthful. But yeah, it's interesting when you say that. That's it. That's all I want to know. They have a habit of, stealing other people's work, just saying.
Well, when somebody's already done it really good, I mean, mimicry is the sincerest form of flattery. Or physical science is physical science. Like, oh, they stole Walter Bislin's model. Yeah, or Walter Bislin just used known optical geometry and
Have you
things
seen the
to
source?
do
No,
that.
have you seen the source code? I'm more than happy to walk you through his source code. What optical imagery?
Oh, okay. So you know quite a bit about that subject then. Okay, that's cool.
It's not only that. The thing is, part of my job, I write code. Like I went through his code out of my own interest, see how he's done it and whatnot. You can see the formulas there. Everything is in the source code. Oddly enough, and what Shane did was basically just copy pasta badly. But anyway, that's not my point, or I care.
Okay.
It's what Walter Bisland's and how he wants to deal with it. But again, just saying, oh, it's optical illusion and whatnot. It's in the source code. If you see the source code, see the math there, it says quite a bit actually. Not telling.
Yeah, the way I understand it, you can basically derive the 3959 radius from the actual the geometry of your eye and the optics of how you see is the best layman's terms I can put it. You know. So I find that interesting. I mean, that's something I need to look into a little bit more specifically so I can have, you know, the appropriate data points on the tip of my tongue so I know what I'm talking about.
I appreciate it. To be honest, honestly, it's not at you or anything as such. Honestly, I appreciate honestly, just especially after what happened with Walter Bislam. No, what happened with him. I mean, he was kind of trying to give out to the community, and he could have just put the licensing on his code. He didn't. So that's on him. I wouldn't do such a thing. I've written public code, but I always make sure it's licensed. Not because I'm trophy hunter, but again, you know, people use it at least, they cannot just misuse it or whatever that thing is. Again, it was a bit shitty, but anyway. But I
Sure.
appreciate it, man. Yeah, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, what's your position on the ether and stuff?
My position ether, it doesn't work for me. It doesn't agree with me. Or at least what I'm studying currently, what I've been studying, it doesn't agree. But it's one of those things I don't discuss it or I don't really go into debate. It's quite complex, and I might understand it. I think I do understand it, but again, even that, I'm really hesitant to say, "Hey, I understand it," even though I've been studying this for quite a bit now. In study group, 4 or 5 of us sitting down, going through a lot of things, reading, reading, reading. I debate it. No, would I talk about it? Not really, because as I said, the two issues, massive issues for me. English is not my native language, so it's kind of difficult to start debating these sort of things, these sort of topics. It can get a bit complicated, and I know my language be an issue for me. And B, like I said, I understand it. I understand. I think okay, but again, discussing it would be difficult. So that's why I'd rather just stay out of it. You know what I mean? I think safe stay out of it. I
Sure,
understand
yeah.
it for myself. Yeah, understanding myself, I know what it is. I know what it is about. But can I explain it fully to a child? I think that would be difficult for me. I think it would be a complicated subject to explain to a child or make someone who doesn't understand to understand it. It's not, relatively speaking, it's a simple subject. So yeah, that's my stand. Yeah, that's why usually I kind of stay out of this sort of relativity conversations.
So are you like you come in here to talk about globe versus flat, or
Yeah, just I don't usually talk. You guys know me. It's a learning curve for me, honestly. I enjoy the
okay.
topic. I enjoy a lot of. You know what? I learn quite a bit from my fellow Globers. Believe it or not. So a lot of kudos and to the flat side because you guys have forced me to kind of re-look into a lot of things, reiterate, go through a lot of materials again. Be anything, could be physics, non-physics, doesn't matter. It kind of helped me face. I always said it, so that's where I stand.
Yeah. Yeah, to me the ether is the crux of the whole spiel. It's not about Earth being flat for me, or it's about proper cosmology and then understanding science. You know, that's what I hope to do anyway. I mean, I enjoy the back and
No,
forth of the globe and flat and stuff like that. And ether is a little bit above my pay grade. There are people that are a little bit smarter than me that talk about it, but at the same time, there's not very many people talking about this, and it just kind of needs to get out there. So that's why I try to spread that out there like I can.
out of
Because I
interest, when
mean,
you say get out there, what do you mean get out there? Because it's not like a forbidden topic in science. It's not like if people talk about it in scientific community, there will be or there will be ban or whatever. You know what I mean? It's been if you go to ResearchGate, if you go to whatever loads of different scientific websites, whichever that might be, you can see people have talked about it, topics around it. What is ether? Could it be ether or whatnot? So we just get it out there. You mean to average Joe, myself, you, or what do you mean get it out there?
well, the more people that know about it, then the better it is if it is a real science. And about it being suppressed and stuff, there are a lot of people who've tried to write papers on it and submitted papers and done a lot of things the right way through the right channels, and they get blackballed. Robert Bennett has his own stories of trying to write papers and trying to rebut people and trying to even get any of these other people that he would be debating or to even respond, and they won't even respond. I mean, so yeah, people are talking about this, but it gets shot down in any kind of official forum constantly. And, if there is any chance that what Nikola Tesla said when he said there is infinite potential stored up in the energy and the eternal recipient and transmitter of this energy is ether, there's any chance that that's true, then we need to look into that, because that changes humanity altogether. Because it's all about the energy, you know. I don't know how you think of governments and authorities these days, but boy, with the way technology is, they get much more power or control. I hate to be pessimistic, but that doesn't look good. Dang, man, it's late.
Yeah, I could keep going about this ether stuff.
I'll still be up for a little bit, for sure.
Okay, so I just, I'm just thinking about this Sagnac effect.
God, I don't know if I saved the link. I got a little short video that describes it here. Hold on.
Well, Sagnac effect that's only going to occur to a rotating system.
Yeah, I think that's where Ruyan Wang comes in. And then there's other dudes' names I can't remember that did all the other ones with the different configurations.
Right. And in Michelson Morley, they did not use what I guess you would call it like a loop or like whatever the rotating system. They used they had two light beams perpendicular to each other. Right. This was to avoid detecting Earth rotation, I'm pretty sure. So they didn't want to measure Earth rotation relative to a stationary ether. Right. They were trying to measure ether wind. So they did not use a loop interferometer that would have detected Sagnac effect. So
Yeah, I should brush up on the details of the differences between Sagnac, or Michelson Morley and Ruyan Wang and the other papers, because that the answer you're looking for is in there. And like I said, I wish my
well,
recall was as
I'm
good as
looking
those
right now.
guys.
Well, yeah, if Earth is rotating, they considered ether to be the cause for the motion of the stars. Wouldn't that mean that ether is rotating? So why wouldn't Michelson Morley use the closed loop interferometer to detect the Sagnac of the ether? Or rather, they're using the perpendicular beams of light, which is going to detect the movement of the, because they're thinking there's going to pick up ether wind because Earth is moving around the sun, I guess. Like, I don't know what they think was going to happen, but they didn't detect anything with the
Yeah, I think that
perpendicular light beams. They did not get. Sorry, go ahead.
that's what I think that's what the summary always says. And the number 6 is always coming up for me. Six freaking something they measured. It's not degrees an hour. That's not right. It's something else. But it was, so they needed something about 30 meters per second. Is that it? 30 meters a second? That sounds about right. It was either 30 or 0. It's 30 and we're moving, or 0, we can't detect anything, which would be a null result. But they got 6. And that wasn't sufficient enough for the globe, and it wasn't the 0 that they needed for it to be an actual null result. So they call it a null result, and then they tell you in the summary that, well, we didn't detect ether, it debunks it. That's been my understanding of that story for a long time. And like I said, the further minutiae or more detail is found out in Ruyang Wang's experiment, and then, God, there are other guys that did ones too. But Ruyang Wang is like really recent. It's like 2000s. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was the Navy that borrowed him the laser interferometer to conduct the experiment. Are you familiar with Space Audit's channel?
I mean, I heard of these guys, but I don't go around there.
Yeah, I mean, really, a lot of the information they offer up, I mean, you can just look at the information and then decide for yourself, you know? Really, to me,
Well,
that's
why
what
don't
a
I
lot
just go right
of...
to Tesla and Michelson Morley? I mean, wouldn't they just be relaying information from that?
Yeah, interesting you say that. Actually, they are basically reading the papers. And that's why it's great to go watch the videos, because they go pull up the paper for you. And then they tell you, hey, the paper's on my database here, cited with a whole bunch of other resources for you to go look at. So really, they basically streamlined the process that you just talked about. Well, shouldn't I go look at the paper? In fact, they've made that much easier for you.
So, since they're not using the closed loop interferometer, which would have detected, Earth's rotation in theory, they used the perpendicular beams, which would have detected Earth's motion through the ether. Or they would have picked up ether wind. If ether is stationary in their presumption and Earth is moving around the sun, right, then they would have detected ether wind.
And
They
then
detected nothing.
what about all the other velocities too of the solar system moving in relation to everything else? I mean, there's a lot of things there that just you know, it's kind of just looks like Earth isn't moving, and there's a dynamic ether that is appears to be moving in lockstep with the stars. I'm not
But
saying
when
it's
they set up the
necessarily the
closed loop
cause.
interferometer, they pick up the 15 degree per hour drift, which indicates Earth rotation.
Again, you're still left holding the bag of that's just the rotation. What about all the other motions? The other velocities that are far higher than the rotation rate. We're kind of,
Okay, I hear you. Yeah, Earth.
the solar system is moving at like 2 million miles an hour, and Earth's spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, and we're orbiting the sun at 66,000 miles an hour. So you've got like 4 to
Well,
6
you would
force
have to be out.
vectors to deal with.
You would have to be outside of that reference frame to pick that up, right? Because we're in the reference frame, we're not detecting it.
And so that's what relativity says, is that depending on where you're standing, you won't be able to detect this stuff. It's all relative. But then relativity, to get the right answer in special relativity and general relativity, I can't remember if it's one or both, but they need to invoke fictitious forces. This is one of the things that Robert Bennett taught us, that he said when he was literally in school learning in physics, and his teacher said, well, now we need to add these fictitious forces. He literally told us, he thought to himself, what the hell am I paying good tuition to learn about fictitious forces for? And to hear
Well, it's
that
not
from somebody at
literally
his age is
fictitious. Like
funny.
the word fiction, like when applied to books, it's not the same thing as what they're saying in a fictitious force. It's still a force.
Um, yeah, okay. I mean, it's semantics at that point. It's like, well, we just need to throw this in there to make it work. Don't worry about the fact that it's totally external to the entire system we've been teaching you the whole time. We'll just throw this in at the end and don't look. As long as you get the right answer, I guess it doesn't matter, right? And then here we come to Occam's razor. Well, which one's more simple? Well, everybody knows who wins that fight.
I don't think these interferometers ever picked up ether.
I suppose to definitively say so would be a stretch a little bit, but it's kind of fitting that way,
That's how, I mean, you know, I'm not trying to be biased either way. I don't care to be right about anything because I'm just trying to understand what your position is while understanding while trying to tell you how I understand it. But yeah, I don't think any of this really concludes that there's an ether. I think that they actually failed to detect the ether.
I think it's a lot of really great evidence, and like I said, you can go over Space Audit's Alan's work or Shane's work, and they have cited everything in fantastic detail.
You said you mentioned the number 6. No, I've heard that before. I'm gonna watch this video that I have. This guy mentioned it in the video. I remember, so I'll find this.
Yeah, I want to say like 6 meters per second or something. God, I
Yeah,
wish I
that
had the
was like
recall.
I thought they considered that the error.
Yeah, and then it's totally outside of their error margin as well. So
Something
like I've
like
been
that,
over
huh?
all this stuff. I know it checks out. I just wish I could spit it back up when I need to.
I mean, where's the rest of the scientific world that kind of saying this checks out?
Well, that's the thing is if they really are hiding ether from us because it's a store of infinite potential energy, I can imagine that they've killed people for a lot less.
I think
I mean, we're
electromagnetic.
literally talking about freeing the entirety of humanity here. This is either tyranny or freedom. There's no doubt about it. Because I mean, I don't know if you guys can sense it, but I can feel with the way that tyranny is coming along with all the authority and now the technology that they have, and then drone warfare. I mean, boy, howdy, things are looking not so good.
The electromagnetic field is very detectable, and you can harness energy from it. And they do that. You can harness energy from the sun. You can harness energy from whatever you want in the sky. They do that. I don't have
Hmm.
information about that when people have corona generators right now.
I definitely smell fish, bro.
Well, I'm wondering, okay, so I can just invent something right now that's going to harness electromagnetism. Like, yeah, I already know that exists. I seen somebody with a regular. They freaking got this wheel spinning super duper fast with nothing plugged in. It was just a matter of it was just a bunch of pulleys.
Oh, wow, man. David Wolf tells the story of his buddy sending him a video of like a small something like a lawnmower engine, but he's instead of using explosion, he's using implosion. And I don't know exactly, and the dude didn't tell him how it worked, but he says that the thing frosted over and froze. So it's using implosion and it's cooling instead of explosion and heating. I can't prove any of that, obviously, but I thought that was really interesting. There's something to it. There's something to ether, and there's something to negative pressure dominant systems that we need to understand.
My bad. I'm looking through this video for the part about the something about 6. Trying to find it. Yeah, I'm not finding it right now.
I might have something. I don't know. In reference to what you're talking about, it's like 6 meters per second or whatever.
Yeah. I think it has to do with because it didn't detect the orbital velocity. Like, okay, so you have these perpendicular beams, and you want to know if Earth is moving through the ether. So you're trying to pick up ether, and it didn't detect 15 degrees per hour because it's not a closed loop, and it didn't detect orbital velocity because we're in the same reference frame. So I think it detected something like 6. I don't remember. It detected something with the value of 6. It must have been like friend shift. I don't know.
There was
But
one
either
I
way,
also saw where they
yeah.
used a RLG to capture the wobbling around the pole. So it's like the pole is meant to wobble a bit every day. And they claim they even measured that. Got this little corkscrew shaped curve.
Wait, you know what we're talking about?
I think I might do. I'm not sure.
Okay.
So
That
yeah,
sounds
the short video that I just linked in there is a pretty good explanation for what we're talking about, and he references Dayton Miller's 2 million experiments in the short video.
okay. I'll watch it. Well, okay. I don't know. Shane, gosh, he explains stuff in a very poor way. If you ask me, he just blah 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 right through what's important. Like he doesn't care to have brevity or be clear or concise. He's just mumbling through his explanation. Like that's what people do when they don't even think their argument's convincing.
I think from within Flat Earth, even he's been critiqued on the exact same things, so I do not disagree with you.
I
He could
mean,
be a
if I
little
want
bit
to get a
better
good point across
articulated.
about what, sorry,
Well, I was just going to say what he does reference is still pertinent, though.
if I'm trying to get a good point across about like why Earth is not moving or orbiting, like I'm not gonna like it's not about that. Like I'm making a clear, concise point.
I guess too, to be fair to that clip, I mean these are just clips taken from like lives and stuff, so it's more like chilling with the boys than it is an actual official presentation. So there's also that fact as far as that particular clip. But no, overall in general, yeah, sometimes he does
But
speak a little fast.
he's saying like, haha, they didn't detect Earth's orbital velocity, haha. And I'm
Well, it
thinking
wasn't.
we're in the same
Well, so
reference frame. Like we wouldn't. You have
But
to be
yeah,
outside the Earth.
the thing is, what in order to show that's meaningful, I'm with you, Callie. You've got to show that you can detect linear motion, right? If you can never ever detect linear displacement, except within within reference to something else, then not detecting Earth's linear motion is exactly what you expect, right? So we only tried to detect Earth's linear motion because we were like, well, that's the fastest thing we can think of. But if this in principle works, it means we can detect absolute displacement, just moving through zero space, right? Which, great.
I hear you.
Why isn't that used for, speedometers or planes or rocket systems or something? How does it work? What is it made out of? Doesn't exist.
No, I think it's funny. I think actually exactly what you're talking about, this motion through absolute space. What is it, Ruyan Wang?
Yeah,
Dang
he
it, one of those
claims he's
guys tried
found
to
it.
get a patent on it. And I think it's Sony and a car manufacturer also tried to do the same patent, I think. On making it into a speedometer. That's funny you say that. It's actually a good point.
Yeah, did they succeed?
Good question. I don't remember. I must have been smoking too much weed that night.
Yeah, it's never nobody's ever cashed in on that patent, so it seems to suggest it's not
So
legit.
if ether is rotating, if ether is the cause for the rotation of the stars, why didn't Michelson Morley pick up a 15 degree per hour drift?
That's a good question. It's a really good question. That's what they would have been detecting, right?
Well, in my mind, the closed loop interferometer is to detect rotation, right? Wait, maybe I got this wrong. I don't know. Wait, can a linear? Ugh. Help me! Can somebody tell me if perpendicular light beams would detect? No, they wouldn't. They would not detect the 15 degree per hour shift
No,
or
they
rotation.
yeah, I don't.
Yeah, you're gonna have to go through everything from Ruyan Wang to everything else to get a real good grasp on this stuff. I just have kind of a crash course in it, and obviously I'm a flat earther, so you can call me biased or whatever, but I really have gone over this stuff and listened very thoroughly, and I do believe that it checks out 100%. But if it sounds like you really want to get into the details and understand it, I strongly suggest that you do that and you read the papers and you be objective. That's all I ask, man. Globe or flat.
Yo, people, what's up? Well, what's the topic in here?
So the closed loop. Hold on, I'll be right back with this. Hold on.
Yo, guys, have you heard that the prisoners are hoping now to be pardoned as well because Biden's underpardoned? I posted in the text. It was posted by the New York Times today. They are delusional, brother, as if Biden would give a shit. Oh my god.
Somebody asked what the subject was.
Yeah, it was me. What is the subject?
Oh, well, we have been talking about the ether for a while, but I'm not dead set on it or anything.
Okay,
I posted a few things in the chat.
Gotcha. So what's the ether? Can you give me a one-sentence explanation of the ether?
Oh God, please not reset right now. Fuck.
It was a thing made up to explain, reached into long lost physics to explain Bob Nodell's measurement where he detected that the Earth was rotating at 15 degrees per hour using a ring laser gyroscope, and he invoked the ether, which was sort of discarded in favor of relativity.
How about a quote from Tesla? The universe has stored up within it infinite potential energy. The eternal recipient and transmitter of this energy is ether. The recognition of ether and the functions that it performs is one of the most important scientific discoveries of our time. That's what Tesla said
free
about
energy,
ether.
Is it free energy then, or what?
Okay, angling alchemy. I just got it. Okay, so because Earth is considered to be rotating, we would be in the reference frame of the perpendicular light beams, right? So if ether is causing the 15 degree per hour drift of the stars, then the perpendicular light beams would show an interference pattern due to ether rotation.
Yes,
because
correct.
we are
And
not
it's
in the same reference
east-west.
frame as the ether rotation, right? If
Well,
Earth is stationary and ether is rotating, then the perpendicular light beams would pick up to 15 degrees per hour.
let's talk about why there's an interference pattern. So they're perpendicular because the interference pattern only happens in an east to west orientation, not in a north to south. And so that's why it proves the anisotropic distribution. Go ahead.
Uh, Still wrapping my head around this.
Dude, it takes a while, man. It's hard. And then when you add in the freaking ones that are spinning, and then the one they put on a track and sent in a direction, and there's just it gets down into it, man. It's not just we sent the beam one time and we got a fringe, and now we need to sit and squibble over what the fringe means. It means something. It just got to get a little further into the details to really wrap your mind around it.
Do you guys ever think it's weird that the people who like do this science don't come to the flat Earth conclusion with it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Just recently the Battle of the Beams was introduced to PhD physicist Robert Bennett, who believes in the ether but also believes in the globe. So he believes in a stationary globe, and so he's been looking over that, and he's still in the middle of it. He hasn't given any answer yet, but that is an interesting question. I mean, if you want to go look way back in history, obviously you know that flat earthers say that every ancient cosmology was an enclosed system with basically a flat earth and a firmament. So the idea goes back a long ways, but why there isn't a correlation between the two, I don't know. I suppose the people in our time were more worried about the on-the-ground science than they were cosmology, in my opinion. Somebody like Tesla, Steinmetz, heavy side. What are the practical applications? Isn't that kind of the huge, big question, the gorilla in the room? To me, it is, because we've been fighting over this kind of thing for a while. It seems like if you know about, even though it's not exactly the same, the dude that made the car that runs off of splitting water into hydrogen and oxygen. I don't know if you guys have ever seen MIT's doesn't have any moving parts drone that flies. Basically like this weird grid pattern that looks kind of like a box, and it no moving parts, it just flies. What is it, defying gravity?
So gravity doesn't exist, huh?
What's that?
Gravity doesn't exist, right?
Well, it's just a misdescribed phenomenon like everything else. I don't dispute the phenomena, I dispute the description interpretation of it.
So they should have taken another word for it. Is that what you're saying?
Well, people call it the electrostatic gradient, which is provable. It's a thing. And you can manipulate electrostatics and make things go up and down and move.
Unfortunately, a piece of paper is not electromagnetic and it's still affected by gravity. I'm just saying, dude.
Well, there are a lot of other factors. Buoyancy and density really is a thing too. And once you set that vector, that downward vector, that's why there's a down, and then that's why everything else carries a weight to it. It's not necessarily that we're being pulled down by some electrostatic force, but that there's an electrostatic force that creates an up and a down.
Yeah, but gravity has nothing to do with electromagnetic, dude.
We can detect electromagnetics. If it was that, you could just get a Gauss gun, or I don't know, but some device that can detect charges and say, there's a lot of electrons jumping about here.
And everything on this Earth is corresponding to gravity, but far not everything on this Earth is corresponding to electromagnets. So,
isn't it funny how if you were to show us that MIT flightless drone 20 years ago, we would have thought it was anti-gravity? Or that's how we describe it. I mean, you're not really describing it as anti-gravity. From what I'm hearing, it sounds like you're invoking and saying, yeah, the electrostatics can overcome gravity, which comes with its own implications as well if you're going to make that assertion.
Lots of things overcome gravity.
Yeah, and we know how airplanes and so function since, I don't know, 150 years, so no one would have said it's defying gravity or it's an anti-gravity machine 20 years ago. 20 years ago was 2004, dude. It was not the Ice Age.
So let me ask you this then, just as kind of a side question to it. Do you believe that the bumblebee flies because of electrostatics, or do you believe it is flapping its wings and pushing the wind?
I'm not sure what they say about that one.
So
I feel like the bumblebee is
Let's talk about it.
an interesting topic about how that functions because I think science is not 100% confident how that works. But that doesn't mean there are an anti-gravity engine in them, if that makes sense.
Oh
And
yeah,
yes,
that's
they
I'm
have.
not saying. I wasn't definitively saying that. I was just wondering if you had an opinion.
Yeah, I don't have because
I thought some of it was, at least what makes sense to me, was the pulling down of the wings creates a like negative partial pressure above that point, and sort of it's lifting itself up by sort of pulling its wings down rather than changing the flow of air. Whereas like, you know, birds, it much more passes over like an airfoil.
So it's creating like a pressure gradient where there'd be more pressure underneath it than above it.
Exactly, yeah.
Kind of the same way that they describe it with the electrostatic thing too, is that it's creating an electrostatic pressure underneath it that's stronger than above it. But I don't know if that's true or not. I think it is. I mean, they say he's too fat to fly. He certainly looks too fat to fly. If I was going to make an airplane, I wouldn't make it like a bumblebee. You know what I'm saying?
bumblebees don't disprove gravity. Can we agree on that?
No, it's just kind of a fun point, is what I was saying.
Okay, I agree on that
The fact that you admitted science, or whoever admitted science, can't fully explain it and doesn't really understand it is well enough of an answer for me.
Real
Yeah,
quick,
I don't think
angling
science ever is should ever be final on an answer. I think there are some things that become so obvious you stop investigating, but I think that's just science communication. That's just people like to speak in absolutes, but usually science I think is in sort of degrees of probability and that kind of business.
Okay, sorry to bring it back to here. I just want to say angular. So
Your mic's not
interferometer and Michelson Morley would in fact have to pick up 15 degrees per hour of ether.
I can barely understand you, man. It sounds like you're talking through a jumper.
Oh, sorry. I'm just saying, I'm literally concluding right now that Morley would have had to have picked up the 15 degree per hour drift of the ether if ether was moving and causing the rotation of the stars. I'll just put a cap on it right there. Like, that's literally my conclusion right now.
Yeah, I don't have much else to say other than what would be repeating myself what I already said. So.
Some guy has a couple of days ago posted like this image from this video from like this TikToker, this pilot. I posted once more. It has not been spoken about yet. I still would be interesting to speak about it or that someone else speaks about it. What's the opinion here? Can anyone from the flat earthers replicate his route on a flat plane where the time zones correspond?
Well, I haven't seen the specific instance you're talking about. You said it was something recent?
Yeah, it was posted from someone in this channel when this guy from the Final Experiment spoke, and I have just saved it. And yesterday I've been on this guy's TikTok channel, so he seems like a legit pilot, and he has multiple of them videos on his, but different videos as well. But I can post the second one as well. He has posted about the same technique, I guess. If someone is interested.
I don't remember exactly when it was, but I think
just now, dude. It's in the side chat. It's in the text chat.
Oh no, I'm talking about something else. Where we actually part of our flat Earth community was heavily critical of using those flight routes, and I think it was Shane and Alan went over it. I want to say it was like 3 or 4 months ago. It was fairly recent, but I remember that the guy, what's his name? I don't know. He goes by Flat Earth Banjo or something. They were kind of chewing on some of his examples of flight routes, and I guess basically to put it in a nutshell, we didn't like him as much as he thought, and upon further review, and we didn't think it was as compelling evidence as originally thought. Maybe I guess I'll just word it that way. I remember that being a point of contention, though. Somebody bringing that up, who was a flat earther, being like, "Dude, look, this shit isn't on the up and up or whatever." I'm not familiar with too many of the details, but
I think we can pretty coherent say that the pilot sees the route where he's flying. It's just in general, and if the pilot looks out of the window and on his map it says Canada is under you, then probably he's over Canada. Can we agree on that?
Well, I mean, if that's indeed the case, yeah, sure. I mean, I would have to look at it, of course, like everything else. But
I mean, the pilot need to know where to go, right?
Yeah, man, I'm not a pilot. You don't know how a lot of that works. I know a lot of those guys, if they're flying commercial, they kind of just everything's punched in already, and they just man the system, really. But there are a lot of flat earth pilots too, so that kind of goes both ways.
No, there's not. There's a couple of people who are students. There's nobody gainfully employed as a commercial pilot who is a flat earther.
To make such a unequivocal statement is a little out of line there, bud. I mean, there's somebody in our community that personally knows in our community an F-15 pilot who's basically corroborated everything we say. I think he was 300 and some miles from K2, and it was level with him when he was flying at almost 30,000 feet or whatever.
Okay, everyone calm down. We all know these 10 pilots who said the Earth is flat. We all know these clips. Yet we have to agree that pilots fly planes and they know where they're going and they have defined routes. And most likely, the route we are shown in this video is the route this pilot is going. I'm just saying. Yeah. So the question is, can we replicate that route on a flat Earth, which also corresponds to the time zones? because we also can prove the time zones. I guess that's very easy for us to see where the sun is at the moment.
Well, how many time zones is there in the southern hemisphere?
I mean, we can just say we don't need to call it time zones. The sun is somewhere. There is the most sun there at this moment. We know that exactly where the sun is at what time. So, do you know what I mean? Even if the sun is not a planet, but like a light bulb or whatever, we definitely know where this light source comes and where this light source heads at the moment. So if
Anybody
the
ever
sky,
told you there's 32 time zones in the southern hemisphere?
yeah, I thought it's 24 time zones on the Earth, but I'm not confident.
Should be. Yeah, that would follow perfectly logically, but no, there isn't. There's 16 in the north, there's 24 in the middle, and there's 32 in the south.
I just want to come back to the question: Can flat earthers replicate that route with time zones corresponding? Because they should be able to replicate pilots' routes, basically all pilots' routes, I guess, on this Earth. If you take flight radar, can we replicate their routes with a flat map where the time zones correspond as well?
I mean, how much data do you really have? You know, we're gonna have to take a look at it all, I guess, dude. I can't give any definitive answer, even to be perfectly honest, either way, you know.
But it seems easy to prove if it is provable, right? It's basically something we could do on Google Maps, basically, and some flat Earth map. We don't need to exit our house to replicate that experiment. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, maybe between me and you that might work out, but we're gonna need some seriously provable evidence that's not coming from a third party. You know what I mean? To convince other people. You know, so we need.
In order to have that, you've got to go and test stuff for yourself. That's what you're saying. You're saying I can't test if it comes from a third party. Meaning you need to do the test yourself in order to know.
Yo, Earth is live. Your microphone is. Earth is live. Can you mute yourself? Your microphone is jinxing. No worries, dude. Okay, back to the topic.
I won't discount the pilot's his testimony at all. I mean, we have to be able to take that into account and give it some degree of credibility. I mean, we just got to take each instance as its own thing, you know. I guess is what I would say. You know, the flight route is my wheelhouse.
It just sounds like it's a way to get out of having to address the point. Right? It's like, well, I can't really comment on it unless I do it myself, and I'm definitely not doing that. So I guess it's not proof.
Also, I believe in the flat Earth. I have not done it by myself, and I have believed in third-party sources all my life. We don't understand you, dude. Your microphone is lagging out. I don't know why. We're talking about this short clip I have posted into the text chat, where the modern version of navigation now shows the ball when they zoom out.
Yeah, and suddenly flight paths make sense. Otherwise, you watch it on like other projections, and the flight path seems really strange. You're doing this big curve, and you're like, I don't feel like I'm curving. And that's one way to tell, actually. Am I flying a curved path over the ground without turning left and right?
Also, if you go to flightradar24.com and you check all flight routes, then all of them are curved, basically. So basically, we can see the curvature of the Earth on all. I mean, but
that little video there? I didn't know that's what you were talking about. That video you just posted in the chat.
Okay, that's what we're talking about exactly.
No, none of us dispute that you can use the globe to be able to navigate. The GPS will show you a globe because all it is a coordinate system transfer. That's all it really is. You could make it into a fucking cube if you wanted to, and give you the right coordinates, and you'd show up everywhere on time, on target every time.
My question is, can you replicate routes and correspond them to time zones like they are on the globe?
Is my mic better now?
Not really.
Can I correlate his route using the time zones and make it fit on a flat Earth? Is your question?
Not only, can you make his route correspond on a flat Earth, which the flat Earth map also corresponds with time zones?
I think the big problem we have is the distances on flat Earth.
That's another thing about distances when you're talking about an airplane. Flat Earth Dave has gone over this a bunch of times. You've probably heard the arguments where, you know, you can fudge those numbers based on how fast the plane is really flying, you know, and because none of us can actually verify any of that. That's all we have to go on is what they tell us.
Wait.
If the plane is flying faster, then the time will be different.
Okay. Gio has once posted for me, I think it was Gio, but I'm not sure, maybe I'm misusing your name here, but there is like this flat Earth map which corresponds with time zones. So some guy has already created a flat Earth map with time zones, correlation of our belief of time zones, and the flight routes don't work there. But they should work because we definitely can be sure that the time zones exist. That's not something NASA is making up. That's basically something we can literally prove for ourselves.
Yeah, we can't just claim that the airplane is flying faster because that's just not true.
Okay. No one is talking about speed, I guess.
No, he was saying we don't know how fast the planes are going, right? They could just be sneakily going faster than we take off. They have to be doing it selectively east to west. So a pilot flying from Sydney to Perth, because when I calculated it comes between like 1.5 and 2 times further distance than I think it is, has to be without knowing it, putting the sticks further forward and getting his airspeed far higher, like double the speed he thinks he's going without realizing it. And I think that's
right. Some of those speeds would have to be upwards of 2,000 miles per hour, which those airplanes are not designed to do that.
Okay, so is someone capable of posting the flat Earth map into the chat? I didn't save it unfortunately last time, where time zones are taken in measurement or taken into the map. Is that something we can have in the side chat? Does anyone have of you that flat Earth map?
I mean, I don't have it handy, and it's really late, and I'm too lazy to look up something like that. I'm gonna go to bed here in a minute, so it's been good talking to you guys. If I don't talk to you again,
was it like a?
I have it. I'm stupid. I have it, dude. I posted into the text chat. Oh no, it's different. So I don't have it. My apologies. I think that would be an easy way for flat earthers to prove something. Just connect the plane routes with time zones and then create a flat earth map which functions. And then maybe we can talk about if planes actually go 5,000 miles an hour instead of 1,000 miles an hour or whatever. But I think we are opening here a little bit of our reach before we have even started.
Well, you do know that there are planes that go faster than 500, right? I mean, it was admitted that some of those flights in the southern hemisphere, I can't remember which ones exactly. They have
there are no commercial airlines that fly 1,000 miles an hour.
But they fly like 700 kilometers per hour, I think. I think that's 400 or 500 miles, I don't know.
Correct.
What's the name? They got Q in their name. It's something in the southern hemisphere. That company specifically. Qantas, there you go. Yeah, the Qantas, they admitted that they have a plane. They talked about it. Like, somebody found it. It was, oh, yeah, it's got Q.
Yeah, they don't know. we definitely know that when we enter a plane and they say we arrive in 7 hours, we arrive in 7 hours, and we definitely know what the globe tried to tell us what the distance was, right? So I can see that if I go from Chicago to New York, it takes me 1 hour or whatever, how long, and I can check on Google Maps what's the distance between Chicago and New York. So that should be working with the flat Earth as well. Doesn't care how fast you fly at the end. I know there is sun and there is no sun. I should land and I have sun. I should start and I have no sun or whatever. Don't need to know how fast the plane goes for that one.
I think the big issue is we have flights in the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere at the same distance. Problem is on flat Earth that distance in the southern hemisphere is twice as long. Sometimes even 3 times as long. It'll take the same amount of time. There's no way that the airplane is traveling 3 times the speed. The airplane is just not designed to do that.
Yeah, as I'm saying, it doesn't care. We know sun yes, sun no. That's what we definitely know. And we know all the airplane routes on this Earth. So if we can correspond that on a flat Earth, on a flat map, then maybe.
It would help. It would start to make it look a bit more like the correct answer.
Also, it would be interesting why literally every flight, especially long flights, show the curvature in their route on flight radar. Because if the Earth is flat, then they are basically wasting gasoline or whatever on every of them flights. I feel like we're going somewhere, people. Huh? Maybe we can become all globetrotters again in this channel. Maybe, dude. Who knows?
Why don't you guys burn one with me? Then we can be friends.
We can be friends even if you're a flat earther, brother.
Who knows, man? Maybe with this Antarctica thing, we'll all get put to pasture.
Will you, if they claim they see a 24-hour sun, will you believe them? Will it mean something to you?
You really want me to go into this or what?
I'm curious. I'm always curious what will change someone's mind on something.
Okay, so I don't know what's going to happen down there. Anybody who says that they do is a liar. Something.
I think there's
Will they get
I know what's going to happen. I know what's going to happen.
This guy wanted to hear my answer, so I mean, I'll give it to him.
No, go ahead.
So-
I know what's going to happen. Go ahead.
If they do, let's just say they do see a 24-hour sun. All right, they go down there, boom, 24-hour sun. It's obvious they see it for let's say they see it for 2.5, 3 days straight. There's no doubt about it. There's 24-hour sun in the sky. What's my response? My response is that negates none of the laser interferometry or any of the other physics that we've been invoking for a couple of years.
What laser interferometry have you been invoking?
Amongst that and many other things, yes.
But what
You
laser?
mean
What do you say? What flat Earth evidence involves laser interferometry? Is what I'm asking.
And also, are you talking about the stuff that you guys misinterpret?
Let me answer that first question first, because that he is correct in asking that in the particular way that he did. Correct. It doesn't necessarily flat Earth ether doesn't necessarily mean automatically flat Earth. It's just a really good saying the Earth is not moving, and if it's not moving, it's probably flat. So yeah, there's that to deal with.
What
was the second question?
To deal with? They failed to detect the rotation of Earth through a method
They've
that
been saying that the whole time. That's not true. It's just not true.
So,
so it's fake,
have
basically.
they ever used that method to detect linear motion of any variety? Have they put it on a rocket or a train or some other to show this? Does show it? We could use this same method and it would show movement if it was there. Has that ever happened? Or is this a bad method for detecting motion?
I was going to say I said it a few times tonight, but I will say it again, that everything from your satellite GPS to weapons guidance systems in the equations automatically inherently invoke and refer to the lab frame, which is stationary on Earth, which is not moving.
But just because they call something stationary, that's it.
Well, there's implications with that. You can understand the implication.
But the implication needs to be that smart physics globers, attempting to detect the rotation of Earth, use a method to do that, and are completely ass backwards about what they're doing and how it works. But a guy on the internet who's never done it, never touched interferometer, I'm going to guess, but certainly isn't au fait with operating them, knows better about what that's actually detecting. It just doesn't seem probable.
Yeah, there's a paper written about this weighing interferometer and absolute motion and how that's being misrepresented. I don't know. It doesn't measure absolute motion.
I'll bet
So the
you.
people who
I'll bet you
conducted the
large piles of
experiment,
cash. He's not a stationary earther.
I also
Yeah,
don't
man.
understand why we always jump 10 topics. The question was, what is happening if you see 24-hour sun on the South Pole?
Oh yeah.
It would be pretty complicated for the flat Earth to create a map where this is functioning, right?
Except if the south is the center, and they just forget that that also happens in the north.
Oh, okay. So we are surrounded by the North Pole, then I get it, dude.
Exactly.
Okay,
Well, there's already
okay.
military build up. Google, just do this now for me. Google a photo of somebody standing at the North Pole. Compare it to a photo of somebody standing at the South Pole. Which one is in a permanent location? Just test that. Just a quick test. Which one do we have a shot of the stars from exactly that point? South or
But
north? Where are
if
all
I
the submarines?
if I would be in this group of people since 12 years, and I would, after 12 years of trying to convince people or whatever to find proof, be paying money to send flat earthers to the South Pole, just to the flat earthers after saying that's not a valid experiment, I would be pissed. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, but I mean, it was considered definitive beforehand when he picked it. He picked it
Yeah.
because it's the one topic upon which all flat earthers agreed. Wow, it's sus. They won't let us go to Antarctica to check this stuff for ourselves.
Yeah,
And he's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
bankroll the trip to do exactly that. And people are like, what would that show?
It's a fun. So, do you want to know if I think it's gonna happen?
You think it's going to happen?
No, I don't think so at all. No, I think Antarctica means it's ant-arcing away from you.
Okay, but the arc is also in the top too, right? Arctic. So
That's-
Antarctic would be not arcing. The Arctic
so-
would be arcing.
Well, I just think of it as arcing around you and arcing away from you. Obviously, that's anything but scientific and completely anecdotal. And I also
It's just word association. It's not even anecdotal. You don't have an experience of arcing meaning the Earth shaped something, right? So it's not even anecdotal.
does Australia mean that it's also trailing away? I'm just confused now.
I think he's accepting that's not a good reason for it. I mean, I love sometimes, we can try it now. I laugh as a flat earther saying the south is the center. And most of the time, or over 90% of the time, people have to accept that it's equally valid. Or they have to commit logical fallacies or invoke things that are equally or more true of the south. Except the only exception being there's more population in the north, but that's just an argument from popularity. But there's no reason why the south can't be the center and the north can't be the ring.
Also, we have, thing sounded good. Really. Also, we have, I just googled it up, we have round about 600,000 pilots and 10 pilots who said the Earth is flat. That means there is 599,990 pilots missing in the flat Earth scene.
I mean, there's the reason I say commercial pilots, I think, is different. Is like somebody who's done got a pilot qualification, takes off from the same airfield, flies in a lap, and comes back, and is in a small plane that's only got a range of 300 miles. They're not going to need to know much. Like for them, they could treat it as flat, and it would do the same, right? All the geometry on the map's going to be the same. The amount of curvature across 300 kilometers is going to not make any difference in anything they're calculating. So there could be a couple of chopper pilots or like people who've got their pilot certificate for a little plane, sure. But yeah, commercial pilot that does like 12-hour routes, or people who do around the world flying, like my dad used to. There's just no chance that you could make them unaware of how fast and far they're traveling.
Eggshells, do we land on the moon?
Probably. Like I used to be a doubter of it. I used to think it was hooey, but then I realized same with a lot of this stuff. I was a mooncon denier, and will still
that's point. So, why I can't see through it. So
Yeah, but when you say see too far, how far have you? Sorry. I'm sorry, my mic is probably terrible. I'm sorry, I'm keep cutting you off.
It's not that good, yeah. I mean, it's not only on Antarctica and in South Pole like this. There is a lot of time zones or moments in the year where, for example, in the top north of Norway, it doesn't get dark or where there is no sun at all. So I feel like maybe all these Norway people, they lie when they report about 3 months in the dark or whatever every year, or maybe they lie when they talk about they have 1 month no dark. I don't know. The Earth is obviously home book saying so.
I had to blow up.
Talking.
phone and looked at social media. I mean, it's a lot of upkeep for camps, you know.
contained